That's how we like it.
How much might we see, Greer, because, clearly that they're still dealing with numbers themselves, they're still helping people, but at the same time they know Samaritans out there, and that's sort of this bigger threat. Will that be kind of percolating in the background for a while, or will it continue to sort of build itself?
I think we're seeing war on a couple fronts emerging this year. In the municipal level, we have the rise of a criminal gang. Whoa, knocked something down there. Called the Brotherhood, and there's a big bad emerging by the name of Dominic, who's going to come into conflict with Elias. So that's sort of our municipal war that's brewing in the city. And then on a larger scale, our guys have to deal with this oppressive artificial intelligence named Samaritan, and what has happened to the machine. And I think that's a point of disillusionment to a degree for Root's character. We have a fantastic episode coming up with some flashbacks where Harold Finch explains how he came up with the machine, and that there's a lot of chapters that weren't told in that process, and the importance of building a machine that actually cared about humankind.
We talked about the cop partnership, but one thing that's really fun on this show is the sort of unlikely ways you can pair these characters who are not characters who normally hang out. And I was talking to you, Kevin, earlier about, could we see like the Finch and Fusco adventure at some point? Do you like that when you get to see how these characters, in a very specific situation, just two characters go off on their own and pair off like that?
Well, Fusco and Finch had a little venture last year. We went to, where did we go to Washington, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
We always seem to break off and go somewhere.
Does that help you?
And they have a lot of fun together, because their tastes are so similar.
Well, Amy, you and Michael have a lot of scenes together. Like these characters, when they met, I do not think we thought that they would be, having the relationship they do. At this point, what do you think? What do you think she thinks of Finch at this point? And there are times still where, of course, her actions are not the actions he would choose. But do you think she kind of just like, oh, he'll forgive me, he'll go along with this?
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of besties, right? Yeah. We had a lot of fun last week going out and stealing some money. So, yeah, I mean, I think the writers do a great job of just giving us specific relationships between each character. And I love every time I get scenes with Michael, I get excited because they're usually really juicy, fun scenes that we get to talk about stuff that I have to look up and figure out what we're talking about. But yeah, it's great.
Now, I'm glad you mentioned the end of last week's episode, though, because, they say the rule in drama is if you show a gun, it's going to end up going off. If you show a missile, you got to fire that missile, right? So, that missile, how might that come into play?
Oh, yeah, that's going to come back around for sure.
In general, though, the team, because that episode showed, how Root helps them get new funding, is that kind of solve their problems for now, or might that be a way they can continue to solve problems, or will we keep seeing the team struggle in a way that in the past we never had to see them struggle?
Oh, I think it's going to get a lot tougher. Obviously, our guys can communicate now. They have underground headquarters in the subway that allows them to remain out of surveillance view of Samaritan, excuse me. Mm-hmm. But you're going to see as the season progresses the tentacles of Samaritan and what can happen when someone unleashes a super intelligence into the world, and how insidious it can become, and how much more difficult it's going to be for Team Machine going forward. It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better.
Mm-hmm. Now, this is a show, just as even as someone who is a fan of the show but also writes about the show, you got to keep, your head around a lot of stuff. Your Decimas, your Vigilance, your HRs. Jim, for you, someone working on the show, are you sometimes having to remind yourself, like, which group is what, and which group is doing what at this point?
All the time. I can't imagine what it's like for you all out there. But I think that as far as you have a lot of the tentacles of Samaritan, Decima. You have of course, HR is out for right now. Who knows? They can come back. You got the Brotherhood, but there's always. I love the allegorical aspect of our show to really what's going on in the world and how Just if you think back in the First World War, and then the tentacles came back in the Second World War, and it just keeps. And there's a lot of those pieces that, when I'm going down the street, that people identify. But one thing they really identify is the characters, the actors, and from all different countries. And we've got French here, we got Chinese.
Bienvenue.
All over, they come up and they
Nos amis de Paris.
love it. And I love going to work because of that.
Michael, Jim just mentioned brotherhood, and I wanted to ask kind of you guys in general about that. Can you talk about that threat and how will that be on Finch's radar increasingly as we move forward, and this new group?
Oh, the Brotherhood with a capital B.
Yeah, not the brotherhood of us, too, but yeah,
I
the
thought
brotherhood.
you wanted me to expand on it as a general theme. 'Cause it's a wonderful thing.
Your thoughts on brotherhood in general, yeah.
Brotherhood. Oh yeah, they're one of our non-AI villain groups, and they're really smart and fast-moving, and they're going to be a huge distraction for our heroes, as if they didn't have enough on their plates already.
Right. Anything you can say, Greg, about that group?
Yeah, this week you're going to meet the leader of the Brotherhood, Dominic, who's a fantastic actor. But the real fun is when Elias, who, after vanquishing the Dons, actually became a fugitive from the law. And while he's been somewhat underground, this group has stepped into the void. And Elias is going to have something to say about it. So that's going to be a fun conflict coming up.
Now, I was asking you about this earlier, Kevin, but Fusco, he's helps them so much, and he's intertwined with them a lot, but he's not in the headquarters with them. He's not going down there. Do you want to see him, go down into the headquarters? Do you want to see him become like a 100% member of the group, or do you like the role he has at this point?
No, I enjoy the separation. That way, that way I don't have to keep up on like Samaritan and the Machine and. No, it's nice to have. In all sincerity, it is nice to have some separation from the group. Somebody that kind of gives it a sense of gravity, and that you look at that and you say, okay, this is real over here, and I think that's really what Fusco brings to the piece, and I enjoy playing that.
Mm-hmm. Now, Amy, I have to ask you about your character and Shaw and some of their interaction. What's the deal there? Is she just messing with her, or And what do you think Shaw feels at this point? Because now it's been like a pretty steady year of these.
I know. I was telling Greg before. Sarah and I always wonder when they wrote me torturing her with an iron if they meant that as foreplay or if it turned out that way. But yeah, it's just a fun relationship, and I think they really have grown to count on each other and need each other and look out for each other, and it's just fun to have that kind of love-hate thing where I never know if she's going to punch me in the face or what's going to happen or something else.
Might we see Root and Shaw sort of mission coming up anytime soon?
I have no idea what you guys were just talking about. No, I think it's a fun relationship, and sort of Root sort of being the aggressor in that respect, and Shaw rebuffing her. It's just they have tremendous chemistry together, and no doubt we'll see the two of them pair up at some point.
We're going to start taking audience questions in a couple minutes. I know it's dark right now, but I know there are mics out there somewhere. Now I see people grouping around them, so I definitely know it's right there. Let me ask, you recently introduced, there's another one there.
Don't get hurt.
You recently introduced the character Chloe, and she's now kind of a new person out there. So what can you say about her and how much of a threat she might become to this group going forward?
Wait, I'm sorry. You mean Zoe, or are we talking about
the character that they recruited, that have been recruited by the others?
Oh, sorry. Claire.
Oh, Claire. Sorry.
Character's name. In episode 2, fantastic actress. I think what we're seeing now is this blooming Cold War, where if Root is almost an oracle of the machine, or someone that speaks through Root, or Harold Finch, obviously, in T-Machine, so it would make sense that Samaritan has its own operatives as well. But what we're also going to realize is that Samaritan's reach is much wider and much more insidious than we ever knew. By the mid-season finale, it gets pretty dramatic and climactic.
What's it like, for both you, Greg, but also for the cast, where, you've got two computers, the Machine and Samaritan, that are characters on the show. Root, especially, obviously, deals with it at such a personal level, but these are ethereal things that you're like dealing with as, in the script. It's like, this is another character, but it's not anyone you're playing off. Is that very strange, or have you gotten used to that?
Was that for me? I wasn't. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because we obviously don't have voices in our heads, at least not the ones that are scripted voices. But just playing the part of having to, it's challenging, because there's some times where even I've had like the script supervisor, I've said, well, what if you said lines to me, and then I just to try out different ways, and I think it's always just an experiment of what's going to work best, and how you hear the machine and how much the machine is actually speaking through you, and making that the difference between Root and the machine, but still being her voice. Mm-hmm.
Greg, how much have you guys talked about, how much should we, you could go 100% and just have a voice that we're constantly hearing for both of these machines, but that would, be a pretty big shift. Have you discussed that, how much you want to do something like that?
Yeah, we've definitely talked about a voice for the machine, mm-hmm. and I think eventually you will see it, but we feel like it demythologizes or demystifies the show to a certain extent, and we think it could be distracting. And surprisingly, I don't think people have missed it much. And there's been direct line of communication, like you saw in the premiere, even Samaritan with Greer, when the text comes over his phone, and he asks essentially whether or not they should eliminate the senator. Mm-hmm. There's something more harrowing, there's something more haunting about that, to see the text response in that moment, where I think maybe giving voice to that audibly might lose some of that resonance.
Gotcha. Start audience questions. A reminder to make your question a question, except make it one about person of interest and not a marriage proposal or a hug. All those great things. We'll start over on this side.
Hi, my name is Jason, and I was just wondering, is Detective Carter really dead, or is someone hiding her?
Oh, whoa.
I was holding her body. There was no heartbeat.
That's a confirmed one, right, Greg? Or I don't know.
Detective Carter, unfortunately, has died, but as we are wont to do, everyone could always live again in flashback. People often think Ingram's still alive, even though he's actually never been alive on the show.
Yeah.
So, never say never.
All right, thank you.
We'll start on that side.
Okay. I just want to say that I love your characters, but Fosco and Root, the episode recently with Fosco with the wingman, that really made me feel good. And Root is a very good character to me, because I have a disability, and it makes me go right through it. It makes me feel good to see that there's ways of working around your disability. My question is, how can someone get to be an extra on the show?
From what I've heard about shooting in New York, you just walk by when you're filming.
Totally.
I don't know.
I don't know if we know that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it could be found online, I'm sure.
Yeah. I do want to ask, by the way, because every show that films in New York had to deal with this last year, but the weather here, there are